Look at these desolate ruins. Do you think the Syrian civil war is just some temporary political feud? Think again. This is actually a death sentence signed thousands of years ago. Let's rewind the clock and uncover the real reason. Flip open the map and you'll see Syria sitting right at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa. A golden location perfectly positioned to dominate global trade. But you know how it goes, a piece of meat this juicy always attracts the most bloodthirsty predators. History doesn't lie. From the Persians, Greeks, and Romans to the Crusaders and the Ottomans. Whenever these massive empires had some free time, they marched right through here to grab a piece. Constantly changing hands and endlessly patched together, this land never truly formed a single, unified identity. It's Mother Nature and these very mountains that tore the country apart. Over on the western coast, the Alawites lived closely together, isolated in tiny villages clinging to the steep slopes. Meanwhile, in the central region, the Sunni community controlled the wealthiest and most bustling commercial hubs. Two worlds, two entirely different ways of life. Sitting right next door to each other but separated by towering peaks and an unbridgeable cultural divide. But cultural barriers weren't the fatal blow. Syria's survival literally hangs by a single thread of water, the Euphrates River. Cruelly enough, this giant water valve is controlled by their neighbor, Turkey. When Turkey built upstream dams, the water flowing into Syria was mercilessly cut off. The breaking point hit with the devastating drought of 2006. Agriculture stalled, and the fields cracked and died. Millions of impoverished farmers were forced to abandon their homes, flooding into the major cities. Overcrowding, skyrocketing unemployment, and gnawing hunger. A massive pressure cooker was fully loaded, just waiting for the day it would explode. Cue the fire and smoke. The protests shaking the streets were really just the final straw for a massive unemployment crisis. But wait a minute, was this disaster solely Mother Nature's fault? The biggest betrayal actually came from human hands. Let's go back to square one, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Britain and France, the two colonial big bosses, casually took out a ruler and redrew the borders. The fallout, families and entire lineages were torn apart by an invisible slice, flung onto opposite sides of completely foreign battle lines. To make matters worse, they crammed all sorts of ethnic groups with zero shared history into a single cage called Syria, forcing different people to live together without any ground rules is basically planting a ticking time bomb. And boom, cultural conflict erupting was practically guaranteed. The ultimate paradox lies right here. The coastal Alawites, who were merely a minority, somehow grabbed absolute power starting in the 1970s. Meanwhile, the Sunnis in the center, making up 70% of the population, had to bite their tongues as they were sidelined from the game of power. That cauldron of resentment had been bubbling for a long time. And that's not all. In the northeast, the Kurds are sitting on a strategic goldmine but constantly screaming for autonomy. As for the Druze in the southwest, they decided to just close their doors, lay low, and stay completely neutral to survive amidst the chaos. Then, the outside powers swooped in. Russia backed the Assad regime to secure its strategic naval base. Iran jumped into the fray out of religious alliance. On the other side of the trenches, the US and Western countries poured in weapons, backing the opposition. From a once prosperous nation, Syria was ripped to shreds, turned into a bloody arena for global superpowers casually playing their own geopolitical chess games. Its killer geographical location made Syria what it was, but now, that very same geography is swallowing it whole. Will peace ever smile upon this ancient civilization so it can reclaim its past glory?